I'm speaking for myself. I think that we should have, after the morning store is replaced, something similar to Sparkle Market, but you have to have some type of high quality, high end. And the reason is, I used to teach a class at Akron, it was a food class, and catering. You can always go to Sparkle Market, especially if I was home late, in a hurry, I had to be at the customer's house. I could get anything I wanted. You don't have to have Stilton, you know, the high-end stuff, but you can have a different grade stuff. And there's like, even if you have the combination that just have to food, let's bring other people in also to shop in Highland stores instead of just having meat and potatoes and bread.
Could you repeat her question because we could not hear?
As I understood it, and correct me if I'm wrong, she was saying that she liked the variety of the Sparkle Market, that whatever she was looking for would be there. And that, and that perhaps we should think about in terms of having more of a destination where people would come in to use the market in Highland Square. That's another great idea, and it's something that we all really need to think about in terms of moving forward. If, you know, a co-op is an option, and it's kind of, I mean, to me it's kind of a cool option because it's something unique, it's something different, it's something that fits so nicely within Highland Square. It makes it one nice option. That's not the only option, but I think it is a good option. Could make it a destination, could make it something different that people are seeking. I don't know where to start. Let's see, I'll start with you right in front.
I'm just wondering, I remember going to meetings 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago even, when we started all the planning for Highland Square. I'm wondering why we're back. I remember going to the meetings 4 and 5 years ago when we started planning, all the planning for Highland Square, and we had speakers come in, and I'm wondering why we're back planning. After all the work, after all the construction, after all this time, why we're in the same place.
Please, kind of in tandem. I think that's a really good question. Starting about, it's more like 7 or 8 years ago, there was a fairly large study undertaken with our tax money. There was, I think, we got $10,000 for an OECA grant. The Ed paid for part of it. Business Association paid for part of it. And it culminated in a couple of documents. One was called the Highland Square Revitalization Strategy. The beauty of that document is that it took the 3 main groups in Highland Square, the retailers, the property owners, and the residents, and it put it in, everybody was interviewed, and it was put into a compromise that everybody seemed to be happy with. And that worked out. For some reason, that document has been set aside, and nobody's looking at it anymore. And this is, I think, this is exactly what this young woman's asking here. What happened to all that stuff? And I'm interested in knowing as well.
Yeah, and I think those are both great questions. And that is something that we can talk about. What happened is we, Albrecht Incorporated and the city as partners for the past 3 years or so have been looking for a grocery operator based on those studies, based on the feedback of the community. And the reality that we're faced with is that grocery operators have not been willing to commit the financial capital, willing to take those financial risks. So a lot of that information was used, and the community forums did reshape dramatically the planned development on the north side. That, if you look at what that started out as and what it finished as, it's almost 2 different projects, and that's because of the valuable input of this community. And that really has improved the development. But now we've got one piece with the grocery store that hasn't quite worked out according to the study, and we all thought it would and we all hoped it would, but it hasn't. So now we're back to think about, well, what next? What else could we do, or how else should we approach this issue? You've had your hand up a while.
To tag on to that, it is intriguing that you say that you have looked at those documents for the last really 7 years of community meetings and minutes, and I hope you have, because the survey, the informal survey that we did years ago, really detailed what the community wanted in the square. In addition to the grocery store, it was a community based of independent businesses, independent restaurants, independent pet stores, independent dry cleaner, a walking neighborhood. And you say you have taken that into consideration in the current development you've done. And yet, in the current development at the very beginning, one of the first establishments that was contacted to come into Highland Square was Starbucks. One of the second ones that was invited to come in was a national ice cream store. Another one that was invited to come in and did move in was a chain Mexican restaurant. And another one that has just been put in is a chain pizza parlor. Do you see any correlation between the businesses that were invited and the ones that were put in to the south side of the street? And I mean, we have a pizza parlor right across from a pizza parlor. We have a Mexican restaurant that was across the street from a Mexican restaurant. They had other problems, yes. But you understand that the survey, if nothing else in the last 7 years, it highlighted the fact that people walk in this neighborhood and they supported local businesses and also local chains like Aladdin's, which is not just one but others. What have we got besides Market Path, which is a great place? We have a Verizon store, we have a chain restaurant, which is fine. But it's not what we had said in the last 7 years of survey results. And I know it's difficult in this economic time to get people into those places, but I just have my doubts on that your vision of what has happened so far is what the Highland Square community would welcome.
Relevant to this, and follow with some of the real estate issues. John Myers, I live in a neighborhood, have for 10 years, went here when I was in school too. From a real estate standpoint, the type of businesses we looked at to bring in here need affordable square footage. When you look at if you put in a typical box, some of these boxes are expensive from a square footage standpoint. That's why you need to attract chains, because chains have the money. If you wanted to move some of the stores on the other side of the street to this side of the street, they couldn't afford the rent. So from an overall development standpoint, I think we need to look at what do we build to attract the businesses we want here. Starbucks will pay exorbitant fees per square foot because they can. Mom and pop operations won't do that. I've known friends of mine who have businesses in town who were attracted to this area, couldn't because it just didn't work out cost-wise. They ended up going on the other side of Main Street, over to the east side to run their businesses. I think that's what we need to look at here. Let's bring some common sense pricing here, and then you'll get the businesses you want in the square. If you continue to build boxes that require 20, 30, 40 bucks a square foot, you're not going to get the local people. You got to look at the build-out cost, you got to look at the square footage cost, and from a real estate attorney, you're going to understand that. A small business can have a tough time moving into one of those boxes that have been built here.
I understand that, and I wanted to answer this question, but just to address that point, I do understand what you're saying. I do think it comes into the bigger picture of what our vision is for Highland Square. What should be preserved? What should be reworked? Preservation is wonderful. I'm all for it. I'm from a little town right outside of Chicago. It's a walkable town. It is. I mean, there's not a grocery store down there, but everything else is basically there. I understand the concept, and I support it, but we have to be realistic, too, about what buildings are there, what can be preserved, what's just going to be too expensive to preserve. When you look at the overall model, certainly new development has its place. It always looks very nice, obviously. There is the component of how much you're going to, what you're going to do.
Isn't there a little bit of arrogance with you guys coming in and asking about the other building in the community? Have you talked to the other building owners about what they feel before you talk about their buildings? I mean,
Thank you for your input, Ron. We will address that question, but we're going to kind of try to go in order because we've had 3 questions now.
I understand your point.